Good morning, Ben. Welcome to the Rockpit, and thank you again so much for taking time out of your day to catch up with me. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really well, thank you.
What
Uh,
time is it there for you? It's early, right?
yeah, 6 a.m.
Oh yeah, wow. Good morning.
Good morning, indeed. It's all good, but look, absolute pleasure to be chatting with you. Um, Now, obviously, the reason for our chat today is that the Fray are on their way to Australia this December. How
Yeah.
exciting, you know? It's been a while between drinks.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're also celebrating, a major anniversary of How to Save a Life 20 years ago. Where's that time
Yeah.
gone?
Yeah, dude. Great question. Like coming up on this anniversary makes us feel so many things, but like old is definitely one of them. Old in body and young at heart. Yeah.
Hmm, absolutely. So, how does it feel to have music that still resonates with people after all this time? I mean, it's frozen moments in time, in memories, and has etched into the minds of millions as to where they were when they first heard their song, or what they went through when they had first heard that song. It's got to
Yeah.
be a really special feeling.
Oh, it's amazing. It's hard to describe because I don't we never expected that we would be experiencing anything like that. Meaning, when we started the band 22 years ago or something, we couldn't even conceive of the idea that somebody else would be reacting to our music, much less us having an experience of our fans, and the phase that we're in now is so special because we feel really grateful for even just the opportunity to like re-engage and to do this again. Um, as far as you're concerned in Australia, we didn't even I remember the first time that we had any Australian shows booked in our career like ages ago, and we felt like, oh my gosh, we're going to Australia. And so now, like all these years later, to even be able to go back and putting these shows on sale, like we got an email from the manager today that like the shows are even just up for pre-sale and there's already tickets moving, and it just makes us feel so grateful that after all this time, like you said, there's people who have a connection to more than us, the music, and that's what we just feel like we're serving that, and we're servants to their connection to our music, which is pretty special.
For sure. And I mean, again, what's even more remarkable is that, the song itself, How to Save a Life, wasn't actually even really the beginning of the band. It was, Over My Head Cable Car that really launched things for you out of the gates.
Yeah.
Again, that's got to be, a pretty special thing to know that your first single that's put out there just blows up everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
what goes through your mind? I mean, obviously a little bit younger and a little less experienced as far as being on the road and in a band. What do you go through in receiving that kind of attention?
You know, if I can put myself back in that time, I there was obviously a lot of excitement, and we were kind of just riding the high of the reception to our music. But it was also a little bit awkward because the first, like you said, the first album we put out was a huge success. The first single we put out was a success even before How to Save a Life, and so for us, it felt there was kind of we never had the advantage of like an awkward growth stage that nobody witnessed. Like we grew as a band in front of everybody because the first thing we did put us in a position where then everybody was watching. And so there, I just remember it feeling like, yeah, we were like, oh crap, well, now we need to evolve and grow up as people and musicians and a band in front of everybody instead of having the luxury that some bands do where you put out an album and it maybe does something, and then you put on another one and it succeeds more, and you can gradually step up to a level. We didn't really, I mean, it was a great problem to have. We didn't have that. And we were just sort of dropped right into the middle of it. And that's another thing that feels really awesome now. It's like we have the opportunity to start again in this season of the band, but with experience and hindsight, which is pretty rare. So I feel grateful for that.
For sure. And, again, in prepping for this interview, you look at the band and what they've actually achieved. I mean, 4 million album sales, 20 million single sales, more than 12 billion streams. Um, I mean, they are massive numbers for anybody or anything. To know that you guys obviously, you know, found an accidental audience, may we say.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you sort of said, you were launched into it. It was kind of an accidental audience, and that you maintain that throughout that first 10 years of the band.
Yeah.
Um, you also came in at such a strange time too, where streaming had really started
Yeah.
to take over our world. How do you think things might have been different had have you been 5 years earlier?
Yeah. We've talked about that a lot and thought about that a lot because we were, the first album came out right. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think around the same time that iTunes did. So even before the birth of streaming, we kind of came out right at the same time that everybody was adjusting to MP3s, digital download music, iPods, like the idea that you could carry your music with you in an even more compact fashion than a Sony Discman or like a Walkman, and the way that digital music changed how people interacted with music and listened to it was so huge, and we were synonymous with that. Again, accidentally. If we could have planned it, it would have been amazing, right? But it's like we just accidentally ended up being synonymous with this huge shift in not only the medium but how people consumed music. Um, and yeah, it's hard to say how things could have been different, but I really think we got lucky because when the Fray was new and on the scene and an emerging band, there was a lot of other newness as well. So I think maybe I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I think maybe uh, people were changing the way that they interacted with music to begin with, and we were introduced to them in the midst of that change. So maybe there was maybe they were more susceptible or more open to that new music. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but yeah, it is pretty wild now. We're so used to streaming, so used to interacting with music, on our phones, and back then it was such a new thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was. And then, you also look at the other little, I guess, boosts that you guys got. I mean, being featured in two of the hottest American TV series at the time, Scrubs and Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah,
I mean, which threw you guys just into the homes of billions worldwide and kept you there, you know.
yeah,
It's got to be a bit of a pinch yourself moment when you know that you've had such success with the first album. Then okay, with the second album, we're going to place you here and here, and the rest of
yeah.
it just completely explodes.
Yeah, and yeah, it has been a pinch me moment at so many points in our career, and I think that just leads us back to this sense of like us having a responsibility, and kind of like uh, we have to be good stewards of the success that has grown, and we are only responsible for so much of that. Like the Grey's Anatomy thing's a good example. Like that was we got really fortunate that they put our song on the show. And like you said, that put us in the living rooms of all these people that we wouldn't maybe normally have been. And then we feel like, okay, like you said, like how do we stay there now that we have that new audience? It's kind of our responsibility to keep them and to hold them and to take care of them, through the years. And that's kind of where we're still at. And we're excited to be able to get back down there and touch base with a whole fan base and a culture and a country that's meant so much to us over the years. Australia's been huge, like such huge supporters from, like I said, the first time that we could even conceive of flying that far away. And then over the years of returning, I think, don't quote me, but I think the last time we were there was in 2012. So, like you said, it's been a minute, but we spent so long going there and it became like one of our favorite places. It's just like feels so close. So we're excited to get back.
Excellent. And Australia is excited to have you back too. So rest assured, I think this tour will be the one to see December, and I have no doubt we'll sell out nationwide. So congratulations to you all. Now, those first four albums,
Yeah.
they all went top 10. It's not just a one-trick pony. It's a continual thing where you manage to engage with your audience and hang on to your audience. That's something that not every artist gets to do when they're thrown, I guess, to the wolves, to the public and to the masses,
Yeah.
in that sort of sense. What do you think the secret to that is for you guys musically?
Man, I don't know. I wish I knew what the secret was, and because if I did, I'd, you know, write a book and tell everybody. I think one thing that we try to keep in mind, I will say, when we are making new music is this, I think for us, this fine line and this balance between making something new and sort of aiming and striving for discovery, just as artists and musicians. It's like there's always something new on the horizon that we are wanting to grab for. But at the same time, um, being, like I said, responsible to not only our fans, but the Fray as a band and as an entity grew so far beyond any one of us as individuals and sort of very quickly became its own thing that we also were interacting with. So, you know, it became like I think as we made more new music, some of the subconscious questions we were asking ourselves in the studio, and it wasn't we weren't like literally saying this, but I think we had this mindset of like, okay, what would make sense for the Fray, more so than like what would make sense for me or what's my personal desire here, but like what would the Fray do here, and kind of serve what that is. And I don't know if we always knew the answer to that, but that was what our compass was set to. At least the goal was this sweet spot between growth and evolution, but also like confidence in our identity. So I'm not sure if we've mastered that, but that's the goal.
It's funny that you talk about new music. Now, obviously, there was a 10-year hiatus from 2014 to 2024, but in 2024, you came back with last year's EP, The Fray Is Back. You lose a member along the way, but when you listen to this EP, it's as if you guys have never gone anywhere. It's such a perfect and natural progression for the band. Uh,
Cool.
you know, it's almost as if to say, there was a pause button hit, really.
Yeah,
Between it all, it's just you come back to it. It's fresh, it's exciting, but it still has its own very, very strong personality that is the Fray. Writing those songs, what was the origin of those? Were they fresh writes? Were they things that came from the past, or was it a bit of both?
a little bit of both. It's cool to hear you say that, and I appreciate those words. It really did. The pause button feels accurate because I all of the songs that showed up on that EP were new, and they didn't exist in a it's not like we had them on the shelf during the whole hiatus and released them 10 years later. They were all new, but what was old, I think, was that sense of when the band went on hiatus and we navigated multiple things like being relatively inactive on hiatus, Isaac leaving the band, the pandemic, like so many different things we had to navigate that sort of elongated that pause to be a lot longer than we thought it was going to be. But throughout all of that, there was a sense in all of us that there was still music to be made. And there was like, that's why I think that pause, you're right, like the pause button was hit. And then this certain level of creativity was just suspended or frozen. Um, and then when we decided to, after Isaac left and Joe and Dave and I kind of circled the wagons and did a bit of soul searching and decided to re-engage in new music, it was like we hit unpause and there was a flood of, I'm not just going to say a flood of creativity, but a flood of desire, expectations. Like it had been a while that we had been on pause. So it was like messy at the beginning stages for sure, because we just dove back in and we're just kind of like swirling around each other. But those songs specifically, most of them, I'm trying to think, most of them came from co-writes that Joe had done. The three of us live in three different cities now, and so just by the nature of life and where life and our families have taken us, we live in three different towns. But that did a really interesting thing for like when we decided to make new music together. Joe already had a batch of songs that he had, at least demos that he had kind of worked on. So I remember like a phone call. We were like, you know what? Maybe the next step is to just let's dive into some new music and see how it feels. And it was like before we even went to the extent of trying to figure out the logistics of getting on a flight or what city we were going to meet up in. He's like, what if I just send you guys a folder of some demos and you guys can listen? So the first steps that we took creatively were remote, which was a really interesting, and I think looking back on it now was the perfect way to do it, because in the comfort of each of our own homes, we could step in, dip our toe into the water again. I remember going into my studio, opening up Joe's demos and just sitting down at the drums and exploring them, but by myself, which I think for the first stage it really felt like that allowed us all the freedom that we needed for that first initial re-engagement, and then we all came together, at one point in the process, because it's necessary to be in the same room after a while. But so yeah, they were all demos that Joe had, that we absorbed independently. I did some tracking and recording on my own. Dave did the same thing, and then we kind of came together in the same room to finish the songs together.
Incredible stuff. Excuse me. But yeah, so what an amazing story. So just going back to the tour, the world tour kicks off on April 17, if I'm correct, in America.
Pretty much, yeah.
You're right through to the last show of 2025 here in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah.
And plans for it to move into 2026 as well.
Yeah, that's the goal. We last year putting out this EP was really just like the first step in a new era for us. And yeah, this year is going to be a busy one, but we're so excited to get back to Europe and the UK and check in with our fans there, get back down to see you guys. And then, yeah, the goal is to set up the new season for the Fray, a new chapter. And yeah, hopefully that means more shows in 26. It definitely will mean more new music. We're working on more new music now. I think we used to feel like we needed to disappear for 2 years in order to make new music and then emerge and tour for 2 years. But we're kind of trying to rethink that now and just make new music whenever it feels good and go out and play shows and try to spin those plates simultaneously. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the goal is to be back at it in 26 and hopefully beyond.
Fantastic. Well, Australia is super excited to have you out here in December. I'm really looking forward to the shows. I've
Awesome.
got to admit that this new EP, The Fray Is Back, it's a statement within itself, and I love where you guys are at now with new music,
Thank you.
with the new format of the band. And I urge people to go out and listen to it. Do you know the Fray has never been away? I guess is one way to say it when you come and listen to that. Thank you so much for 20 years of incredible music, and most importantly, we can't wait to see you back out here and have you back out here. I
Oh,
wish
man,
you
thank you.
I wish you all the success for the beginning of the tour and right through, and I hope you travel safe. And it's an honour to probably have the last show of 2025 here in Melbourne and the last leg of the 25 tour in Australia. Thank you
Oh,
again
yeah.
for your time, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and
Yeah.
see you
Thank
in
you, Andrew.
Australia.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
No worries.